Sherry Rumpf of San Antonio prayed on Monday over crosses that were put up outside a gas station in Sutherland Springs, Texas, to honor the victims of the shooting. Credit Todd Heisler. The New York Times want to get this briefing by email. Here's the sign up. Good morning. Here's what you need to know. Devin Kelley, who killed 26 people in a Baptist church in Sutherland Springs, Texas, shouldn't have been allowed to buy a military-style rifle, but his domestic violence court-martial wasn't entered into a federal database, the Air Force has admitted. President Trump said today that stricter gun laws could have worsened the death toll. Our profile of the killer reveals that he beat his wife, cracked his toddler stepson's skull, and was kicked out of the military. Residents of Sutherland Springs describe how the assault has shaken a tightly knit community, and recall the events in a video. And we spoke with qualcomm, 86, who is mourning 8 family members. Our reporters looked at what doesn't explain why the U.S. has so many more gun deaths than other countries do. President Trump, in South Korea, said the U.S. was making headway in diplomatic efforts. President Trump with troops in Seoul, South Korea, today. Unlike previous presidents, Mr. Trump skipped the traditional visit to the demilitarized zone separating the North and the South. Credit Doug Mills, the New York Times. Think they understand we have unparalleled strength, Mr. Trump said of Pyongyang, adding that he thought it made sense for North Korea to come to the table and make a deal. Mr. Trump continues his Asia tour with a visit to Beijing on Wednesday. The movie mogul hired private detectives, lawyers and undercover operatives to try to stop the Times and the New Yorker from publishing articles about accusations of sexual harassment and assault against him. The Television Academy, which awards the Primetime Emmys, expelled Mr. Weinstein, citing widespread and deeply disturbing examples of his behavior toward women. Our gender editor looks at how social media, famous accusers and a generational change add up to a profound shift. Revelations continue from the Paradise Papers, a trove of documents from an offshore firm used to obscure wealth. The offices of Appleby, an offshore law firm, in St. Helier, Jersey. The Bermuda-based company has helped Apple reduce its tax burden in the U.S. Credit Andrew tested for the New York Times says Apple's tax structure, and its reliance on Ireland, came under scrutiny. The tech giant turned to the island of Jersey, in the English Channel. According to one estimate, tax strategies like the ones Apple use cost governments as much as $240 billion a year in lost revenue. Several state and local elections are being held today, including in New York City, where voters are deciding whether to hand Mayor Bill de Blasio another term. If you're catching up on the issues, we list 7 reasons to vote in New York, and here's what to watch in the governor's races in Virginia and New Jersey. We look at why a domestic violence conviction failed to stop Devin Kelley from buying weapons. Listen on a computer, an iOS device or an Android device. Broadcom has offered to buy a rival chip maker, Qualcomm, for $105 billion, in what would be the biggest takeover in the history of the technology industry. The Republican tax bill would cut taxes, on average, but it would raise them for millions of middle-class families. A Times analysis found princes, dictators and oligarchs from Saudi Arabia and Russia, among other countries, are investing heavily in Silicon Valley, our tech columnist writes. U.S. stocks were up on Monday. Here's a snapshot of global markets. Tips, both new and old, for a more fulfilling life. Readers share tips for the perfect out-of-office email reply. Are you a savvy traveler? Take our quiz to find out. The questions come with a great vacation advice recipe of the day. Get ambitious with a clam chowder pizza, where East meets West. After delays, the Louvre Abu Dhabi, created by architect Jean Nouvel, is about to open. Published on Av. 7, 2017. Credit image by Katerina Premfors for the New York Times. Technology by Samsung. In today's 360 video, visit the Louvre Abu Dhabi, created by the architect Jean Nouvel, which aims to act as a bridge between civilizations. Protections for Nicaraguans to end. Thousands who arrived illegally in the U.S., many of them decades ago, will have to leave the country, the Trump administration said. A fight over gardening. The altercation that left Senator Rand Paul nursing bruised lungs and broken ribs was said to have begun over a landscaping dispute with a neighbor. Partisan writing you shouldn't miss. Writers from across the political spectrum discussed the church shooting in Texas, a parasite problem in Norway. Fish farmers face new curbs aimed at protecting the country's stocks of wild salmon, which have more than halved, partly because of the spread of sea lice. Processing salmon in Brønnøy, Norway. The wild salmon population has more than halved in recent years. Credits Sergei Ponomarev for the New York Times. Rising tensions in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia called a missile fired from Yemen an act of war by Iran, signaling the sharpest escalation in nearly 3 decades of hostility between the regional rivals, our correspondent writes in an analysis. Separately, the political purge in Saudi Arabia has created a gilded prison. We obtained video from inside the Ritz-Carlton in the capital, Riyadh, where royals, business leaders and former government ministers are being held. Best of late-night TV, James Corden and the other hosts made fun of President Trump's visit to Japan. Quotation of the day: over the years, we all saw him change into something that he wasn't. To be completely honest, I'm really not surprised this happened, and I don't think anyone who knew him is very surprised either. Courtney Kleiber, who knew Devin Kelly, the Texas church gunman, since middle school. 100 years ago today, one of the century's most momentous uprisings hit St. Petersburg. The Russian Revolution's eventual outcome, the Soviet Union, offered hope for some but delivered suffering for many. Lenin addressing a crowd in Moscow on November 7, 1918, the first anniversary of the Russian Revolution. Credit Russian State Archive of Social and Political History, via Associated Press. Throughout the centenary year, we explored the legacy of communism in a series of op-eds. Red Century, perhaps less noted, is how the revolution changed culinary history. Millions of émigrés of the remains of the Russian Empire took their cuisine with them. As the American, wandering a foreign land, longs for ham and eggs country style, so does the Russian exile want borscht, the national Russian soup, with his meal, the Times wrote in 1935. And in New York he gets it. A Parisian cookbook from 1938 described borscht as a Russian soup made from beef, duck, pork belly, garnished with cabbage, julienne and beetroot. It also provided a Polish version. To this day, restaurants in Hong Kong serve lor sung tong, a soup derived from the borscht made by migrants from Russia and Eastern Europe who sought refuge in what was then a British colony. And just last month, Ukraine sought to widen the soup's global reach on Twitter, at Google, at Apple. Time to have a borscht emoji. Patrick Bowler contributed, reporting, _______. Your morning briefing is published weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern and updated all morning. Browse past briefings here. If photographs appear out of order, please download the updated New York Times app from iTunes or Google Play. What would you like to see here? Contact us at briefing@nytimes.com. You can get the briefing delivered to your inbox Sunday through Friday. We have 4 global editions, timed for the Americas, Europe, Asia and Australia, and an evening briefing on weeknights. Check out our full range of free newsletters here.